Folks, it is Freaky Friday, but it's going to be more serious than normal. So more like a first Friday, because we have never had, believe it or not, on the podcast daily, Ohio State Athletic Director Ross Bjork on the program. So we're pumped for that. Yeah. It is a first on the show. That is Berm. I'm Austin Ward. Ross, thanks for having us up here.
I appreciate it.
It's been a long time coming. You've been on every other show, but we wanted to be the last one.
It only took you, close to 6 months. It's all good though.
Well, how have these
great to join you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How have the 6 months been? It's a big picture question, settling in.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. It was really a gift and a blessing, and I've said this many times, to have that overlap with Gene, where I got in town on March 2nd. Very first athletic event was the basketball game against the team up north, as we call them, University of Michigan. And it was a great way to just sort of walk around and meet people. And then to have that overlap with Gene, I mean, that was truly a gift, truly a treasure to have that. Notre Dame went through a similar process. And so I kind of watched that. I studied that. I talked to their incoming AD. Hey, what'd you do? How'd you handle it? Because normally you don't get that. So I think the fact that I had that allowed me on July 1 to say, okay, I really know what I'm walking into, truly, truly. Because a lot of times you're just reading materials and maybe you meet a few people and then you go.
Yeah.
The fact that I was here, had to make some major decisions. It's really been awesome to get to know the people, the culture, the place. It's a big place, but it's really a small town.
I was going to say,
because relationships matter. So I've really learned that. It's been a cool way to really just soak it all in.
Yeah, I was going to say 6 months or a 3 month head start. That's still not enough, because I'm sure that there's things every single day at this point. They're like, this place is a little bit different. I'm learning this. I'm learning that. I'm adjusting. Like, we're still doing that.
Right.
Being around the program.
And how long you guys been around? Long time.
Too long.
Dozen years. Right. It's funny though, like when you enter the situation, you're like a guy buying a new car or buying a used car, and you got the opportunity to listen to it run for 3 months.
Yeah.
And
I think that's a good way
be
to
able to figure like, hey, I can hear there's a knock over here. Like,
right.
What was the first thing that you really were like, hey, that I'd like to tweak that, or
yeah.
Not that you're going to throw anything under the bus, but you come from a place in Texas A&M that obviously is a huge athletic department. What was the first thing you're like, oh, that's interesting to me. I wouldn't have done it that way, or I didn't think of it that way, or I'd like to change that.
Yeah. So when I worked at the University of Missouri as a development officer, we used to have the TV trucks like parked right in front of the stadium, taking up valuable real estate. This was 1997. And one of the first things we did as fundraisers there, we said, we have to move those TV trucks. So
you got to get the media out of there.
When I was at Ole Miss, the same thing. TV trucks, like right front door. So I get to the spring game here, and I see that, and I'm like, what is that?
The West Lot.
Why are those there? Well, they've been there, forever. And it's probably one of those things that people walked by for years and just never noticed it. It was the most convenient place because the hookup had to be right there in front, and it goes right into the press box, which feeds, the TV booth and all those, mechanics that it has to, to feed to operate the game. And so I noticed that on the spring game. I didn't say anything. And again, you're not throwing anybody under the bus. It's just a new way of thinking about things. And so I immediately go to Mike Pinner, who oversees our facilities, and I said, hey, can we move those? Probably. Where would they go? I don't know. But let's find a place. So we're working on a plan to move the TV trucks from the front door, basically, to another location that tucks them away. They still have access. They're still visible, to plug and play into the broadcast. But, those are just little things. And I think that's what's really neat about this place is Gene had such a great culture and such a great environment where things were so positive, a well-oiled machine. But you bring in somebody who has been an AD for, 15 years or so. And I've been around at enough programs where, okay, we can tweak that. We can add this. There's so much potential still here. We do so many great things, but there's still an upside. So when we move the TV trucks, people will say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that was possible.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're going to move them yet. I think we have a few ideas, but things like that. We have a lot of things in our concourse that we got to get out of there that are operational. So we're working on little things like that. So I guess the TV truck, Jeremy, might have been one of the first things.
He never would have guessed it.
I come from, before getting into this business, like I come from a management perspective. And when you move around, like you always have that thing in your back pocket. You're like, well, there's this one thing that I've always done and it's been successful. So when you walk into a new place and it's like, oh, look at this. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's a good way to.
And at Texas A&M, it was a brand new stadium, right? And so they were able to tuck that stuff away. At Ole Miss, we built a new basketball arena right next to the football stadium. As part of that project, we were able to create a TV truck compound.
Right. The shot doesn't have the same problem as
the shot does not have the same problem, right? There's a loading dock. And so the shoe, we don't have a loading dock, right? It's an older building. It's 102 years old, right? Yeah. So those are the kind of things. That's exactly right. Yep.
So Ross, that's one of the kinds of things that you can only learn by going through your first game day, going through your first season, your first spring game. You went through your first edition of the rivalry a few weeks ago, so I don't feel any need to put that off. Like what that Saturday and then the ensuing fallout of that, what has that been like for you?
Yeah. Well, everybody says, you can't really understand it till you experience it, right? And sure enough, that's what played out. Obviously, we wanted to win. We know the expectations. We know how the last 3 years have gone, and this year it didn't go our way. But what you learn is that the magnification of that game is massive, even more than you can describe. I mean, you always hear about the game and the team up north, and they don't wear red and we don't wear blue, and we cross out the M's, and they have a countdown clock and we have a countdown clock. So you see those things, but until you kind of walk on game day, you don't really understand it. Until you kind of see all the production behind it, you don't really understand it. And so that was neat. That was neat to see. Clearly, we wanted to play better, and the players know that, the coaches know that. And so then you have to say, okay, what do you learn from? Do you need to tweak anything? Do we need to adjust the way we talk about that game? Not to say, you can't say it's just another game. You can't say that.
You're not gonna
There's no way you say that. But you look at other rivalries. Army-Navy is getting played this weekend. They have countdown clocks, and they have different things, but yet they play, 11 other games. And so how do you have big picture thinking, but also hone in on that game? I think you learn from other coaches. Woody handled it a different way, right? Tressel handled it a different way. Urban handled it a different way. And Coach probably has a little more of the Urban style of handling that game. Coach Day does. And so, okay, do you need to tweak anything around that? And then, the aftermath of that game, that was really unfortunate. I don't blame our guys for defending our field. We have every right to do that. I wish it would not have escalated in that manner. I wish adults would have gotten control of the situation earlier. People that are experienced, coaches, administrators, were fine with Michigan celebrating in the end zone. But once that was brought to midfield, it escalated. Yeah. And everybody saw that later that night at different games.
It happened 4 times that day.
We've seen that at other venues, right?
It is an instigation. Like that's what what's going to happen.
Yeah. So we got to be better. We got to be better sportsmanship around the game. We've got to do things around sort of, again, how we talk about it. What that looks like, we'll focus on that at a different time. Right now, we're in the playoffs. We have a high-level program. We wake up every day in the hunt, right? And not many programs can say that. And so we have the right leadership. We got the right infrastructure. We got the biggest and best fan base in the country. We sell the most merchandise. We generate the most revenue. You go to every metric, we're in the hunt every single day, and that's a great asset to have. Now, how do we grow upon that? How do we learn upon that based on that game moving forward? So right now, hey, it's about the playoffs. Let's make the shoe electric on December 21st, and that's what we're focused on right now. Make a run.
That's been the focus of yours, right? I mean, we heard through the grapevine in Eugene when we were out there for the Oregon game about how so many people in the facilities portion of the program was like, wow, that's different. Yeah. And again, coming from A&M, like, what has been your initial impression of games at Ohio Stadium, and where do you see the biggest opportunity to not just make an immediate change, but like a long-term change? The scoreboard, whatever it is, where do you see the upgrades?
I think you have sort of the pageantry pieces of it, and then you have the infrastructure pieces of it. And so to me, we got to look at both. So we are reviewing plans. How soon can we have a new video board? How soon can we replace all the LED? How do we take the north end zone video board and get that off the C deck and move that up, right? Maybe it's over the rotunda area and there's a big, structure up there. So we're in the process of studying that element right now. So you have those sort of game day things that feed into it around infrastructure. Obviously, concourse cleanup, adding the 1922 club, sort of more tactical kind of surgery around the building. We're looking at as many things that we can do as possible, more premium spaces as well. But the pageantry piece, I think what Oregon really did is they really honed in on who they are, right? Oregon has this aura, this feel. Everybody's all in. It's a smaller culture, right? It's a smaller fan base. But like the Oregon song that they played, I think between first and second quarter. So how do we show more Ohio-themed sort of legacy, right, around the state pride? I met so many people this year that this was their first football game ever. And they've been a Buckeye fan all their life, or they come to one game a year. So how do we have things around game day that bring in Ohio pride, whether that's a video, whether that's a song? How do we showcase the history? Do we have a video? I'm not saying we're doing this, but an idea. Do we have a video of Coach Hayes giving some knockdown, drag-out speech where he gets everybody fired up on third down, as an example?
We know there's a lot of those for Urban.
Right, that's right.
Cameras were in the locker room.
Yeah, so how do we show history related to game day, related to the state of Ohio, the pride? We have unbelievable fans that are loyal, right, all day long and all year long. And that's really exciting. So capitalize on that passion. And then I think we could just be louder, more consistently. And what that does is you have to bring out some element of consistency. When this is played, we do this. When this happens, the students wave a towel. Right? Pittsburgh has the towel. Texas A&M has the towel. Penn State has the pom-pom. Is there something that we give?
We don't want that.
No cat growl.
Right. What's a Buckeye sound like? What would that sound like?
Just the sound of something falling off a tree.
So those are the exciting things. So we have somebody that's working with us. We have a consultant. We're going to start some focus groups. We're going to have a student focus group. We're going to have some fans and some of our donors. We're going to have stakeholders like sponsors. We're going to have people in the athletic department. We're going to have people on campus. Maybe we'll do a media. Maybe we'll do a roundtable at
We're full of ideas. So whether they're good or not, I don't know.
There's obviously
we got to get feedback
of college football, right? But
that's right.
You have to find a way to delineate that, or to separate it on the field versus the rest of the stadium. Like, what are the thoughts behind doing that? Because again, I keep going back to Oregon, but their crowd was cheering at halftime. We're like, what is going on?
Right.
I've never seen anything like it. So you have to find some way to strike a balance between profit and making money, which is obviously important, and having an atmosphere that says this is a party, not a wine and cheese dinner.
And what you do by making it more fun is it creates more value for those sponsors. Hey, we can put a sponsor bug on this activation, and it's really fun, and they're gonna that was sponsored by Huntington Bank or whoever. So I think we actually add more value to our sponsors by making it a better atmosphere versus just a straight public announcement on a script. Right. And then with more digital assets, you can turn a few more things on. You can have moments of exclusivity, things like that, if you have more digital assets. So I think we can actually make it more valuable to be a sponsor if the atmosphere is more engaging. What that looks like is all being mapped out, but those are the things that we're studying now and obviously into the off season.
You get a chance to work on some of that. I understand that the college football playoff is going to do some things in the horseshoe that you don't have any control over, but how much is next Saturday a test run for some of those things?
I think you're exactly right. So we can't do as many sponsor reads. We can do some, but not as many. So we have to throw in more music, more elements, more video board, more LED board. So you'll see some of that. We have to provide the visiting team with an intro video, which is okay.
It's just another opportunity to boo.
Yeah, but then when we do ours, we need to make sure, we're doing fireworks, we're doing the pyro. We'll have a drone show because it's a night game. People have been asking about night games for some reason. That's been a thing. It's been a thing. That's probably another podcast for the spring. But no, I think all of those kind of things, we can test a few more things. When do we play the national anthem? Those are the kind of things that sort of drive energy and drive crowds. And so those are elements. So we'll put a few things in place next week. Obviously, Scarlet, all Scarlet, both, the team. We're asking the fans, get those winter coats out that are
coats,
scarlet color, or put something over the top of your other colored coat. But those are the kind of things you'll see a few things. We can't go all the way because there is some elements that are controlled by the CFP.
Yeah.
But I think we can make it a lot more fun than maybe it has been. And then the night game, I think, because people have been clamoring for that, let's really, show that off in many ways.
How have the ticket sales been so far?
It just announced today that it was sold out.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
so when it went on sale
that.
to the public, it was on fire. Really the last 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, everything just took off. And so people are excited.
Do you think, so I want to tie this back into the conversation about the game and Ryan Day. Like, Ohio State's fan base bought up those tickets immediately. I think they spent the first week in mourning and upset, and the wound was fresh. I'm never going to pay for a ticket. I'm not going to go to the playoff game and vote with my wallet. You came out right away and talked to Bill Rabinowitz on that Sunday night. So Ryan Day going to be the coach. I thought there might have been some wiggle room in the statement. I'm not trying to box you into any corner, but that's the next step. You have to move on to that. And I think Ohio State fans are starting to. Everyone is always going to be upset about that particular game, but I wonder how much that factors into your evaluation and what you think is the next step here.
Yeah. To me, it was really, really important. I didn't want to say anything after the game. I was approached, right after the game. I always go to the press conference, as you guys know. You guys see me there. I'm usually the first one through the door.
That's my cue.
I wasn't last week.
Let's get ready for business.
But I usually, I'm there because I want to be supportive. I want to listen, right, to what our coach says and what the players say. And so I got approached, and I just the aftermath. You interview the players, interview Coach Day. There'll be a time and a place. But I really felt it was important that we came out, Sunday or Monday morning and just said, look, we're still in the mix here. The goal of winning a championship, we didn't achieve the other goals, but the goal of winning a championship is right in front of us. We knew we were going to be on the hosting a game at that point. We knew we weren't going to get a bye, right? But we have to have belief in the program. We should have confidence. And if I don't believe, then who will? And I've always had that mantra when I became an athletic director that I have to be the chief cheerleader. I got to be the chief supporter. I've got to be all in because people need to hear that there's confidence in the program and there's confidence in our program. We have a great team. They need to hear that. We have great coaches. The coaches need that reinforcement. Everyone's human, right? When things don't go your way, you got two choices, retreat or lean in. And so we're leaning in. And that was really the important thing, I think, from a timing standpoint was, look, these players need to wake up on Monday and say, okay, people believe in us. It didn't go our way. And we hate that, right? And that's going to eat at us for a long time until we play that game again.
Right.
But look what's ahead of us. We're going to be playing a game at the Shoe, the latest game we've ever played. Never played a game in December. We got the playoffs in front of us. We have great talent. We have a great culture. We run it at a high level. So to me, I just felt it was important. And then even these kind of messages, right? I mean, doing different shows. And again, I should not be the most visible person in our athletic department.
You're the fundraiser, though. You left
players
that
and the
part
coaches,
out of your
right?
job description.
That's again another podcast. But look, I think confidence in leadership, confidence in the program, you have to be the chief cheerleader. You just have to be, because again, if I'm running down the hallway with my hair on fire, guess what? What's everybody else going to do?
Well, chaos around here.
So let's lean in. Let's be positive. Let's be supportive. And then look, in the off season, there's always tweaks. There was tweaks last year, right? So what does that look like? How do we help coach? How do we, again, provide the right kind of support, the right kind of resources? That's for later, but in this time, let's go play. Let's go win it. That's the goal.
Some of your notoriety, I guess, before you were hired here was involved how previous coaching changes had been dealt with and what decisions had to be made.
For good or bad?
Yeah, for good or bad. I mean, that's
he said notoriety.
That is your job.
That's a good way to put it.
It's depending on who you're talking to. It's part of your job.
That's right.
So how much of that experience plays into your decision to come out immediately? You have a lot of people here like the vote of confidence, like, oh, crap, that's bad, but it doesn't have to. And beyond that, what is it about Ryan Day, that someone that you have been in your position now for, 2 decades-ish, that makes you talk to Ryan Day and be like, I believe in that guy? Because I think from an Ohio State fan perspective, there's a lot of people who are on the fence of, I don't know that I believe that Ryan Day is the right guy to get this program where it needs to go. Why are you so convinced he is?
Yeah. I think what President Carter said at my press conference, he was asked a similar question, like, hey, Ross's background, he's had some issues, right? How did you put it? Notoriety.
I mean,
right?
again,
right?
He didn't call you infamous. That was the next
right.
Depending on which fan base you're talking about, you might be infamous.
I still hear from some of those previous fan bases.
We're not here to blow smoke, Ross.
Yeah, no, that's right. So he said, a calm sea never produces a good sailor. So you're going to be tested. It's just a matter of when. It's not if, it's when, right? So I've been tested. We've been tested in a very visible, public way. When you're on SportsCenter on July 20th, that's not a good thing. And that's what happened in the summer of 2020. We had to let our football coach go when I was at Ole Miss. That's not a good thing, right? You don't want to be
especially
in that
summer
position.
of 2020. Everyone's home.
Right. The summer of 2017. It was July 20th, 2017. Not that I remember that date, right? But you're going to be tested. And so, I think those experiences allow me to say, you know what? You can analyze this situation. You can look at it and say, okay, based on my experience, I'm going to use my opinion and my perspective because I've been through some things before, right? So that definitely helps. And sitting down with Coach Day, I think what people sort of lose sight of sometimes because we're Ohio State and it's so big, this is his 6th year as a head coach, right? He had never been a head coach before. And the rarity of that, right? When was the last time a non-sitting head coach was hired here at Ohio State?
I consider myself somewhat of a
Urban wasn't a sitting head coach, but he was a head coach for a long time.
Experienced
right? Tressel, sitting
first time
head coach.
I can't.
Coach Cooper, sitting head coach. Earl Bruce.
He was a head coach at Iowa State.
Yeah. So we have to put that in perspective that he is still growing. He is still learning. We're helping him. So what I see is modern day approach to recruiting. I see modern day approach to the football, to the scheming side. I see someone who has the ability to hire a great staff and has a network. You have to have a network in this business because coaches are going to come and go. Yeah. Whether you proactively, have to make a move or they get a job. So what's the network look like? What's the culture of the program? You ought to see our athletes, and you guys see some of it. Yeah. You ought to see our athletes around Coach Day, right? There's a bond there. There's a chemistry. That doesn't happen by accident. That doesn't happen because Ryan Day's a good guy. That takes time, right? So then you see how hard he works, how much he pours into it. He's passionate, right? And there's been moments like that where maybe the passion has gotten, the best of him a little bit. But I'd rather have that than trying to get somebody
I felt the same way after the game. Like, there has been moments in the last 4 years in the losing streak where it seemed like Ohio State was not playing with the same energy or passion as the rival on the field. I thought it was, to me, maybe not to you because you had to write the check for the fine, but the fighting afterwards showed that the culture was still strong to me.
Right. They're together. And so I think the bottom line in all of this is, look, in modern day college football, you're going to have money, you're going to have NIL, we're going to be revenue sharing. Okay, that's fine. It is what it is. But the programs that are going to really thrive are the ones that are going to have the intangibles, the culture, the leadership, the chemistry, the bond, all of those things. Is anything perfect? No program is.
Sure.
You're always going to have to work at that piece. But I've seen Coach take such an intentional approach. I sat through meetings in the spring with the parents. We have a parents association. Not many programs have that.
Right.
But it's all about, this is what we're talking to your young men about, your sons. That's an intentional leadership culture moment. So all of those things, Jeremy, I think just adds up to, just utmost confidence that, we've had some issues. We don't like it. We don't like to lose to that team, right? We want to beat more top 5 teams, whatever. But the process has to be right. The culture has to be right. If you get fixated only on one thing, then that's a losing proposition. You have to have everything else that leads to the end result.
You mentioned the NIL and revenue sharing portion, and I know that is pretty much all Birmingham is thinking about right now. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're entering in such a unique space. There's a lot of people questioning, wondering about the scholarship limits and the possibility to expand the roster to 105 scholarships, which from my conversations with people around the country, I don't think most programs are even considering that.
No.
I've actually heard from some that they're actually considering taking a different approach and going under 85 in order to have a smaller pool of players to share that profit sharing money with? What is the conversation you guys have had here? Do you, just to be clear, like my expectation is that the 105 thing is not a reality here.
Right.
Is there any thought of going the other way and saying, if we have at Ohio State 75 of the best players in the country, as opposed to 60 and then 45 preferred walk-ons who are getting a slice of NIL money, which way makes more sense?
Yeah. A few things are still being mapped out. We pretty much have sort of our scholarship number allocated to football and for all the other sports as well. We had to give our coaches really a lot of clarity for signing day in November for other sports, and then obviously for football. So we have a lot of that baked out right now. And the way we're approaching it is we're going to have basically, so there's 3 buckets of money: scholarship money, revenue share, which is really institutional NIL rights that we're purchasing non-exclusively, and then third-party NIL. On the scholarship piece, what we're doing is we're going to our coaches and we're saying, here is a cash allotment equal to a certain amount of scholarships. If you want to spend all that money on in-state and you're the baseball program, your money's going to go farther. If you want to recruit all out-of-state, like we have to do in some of our sports because of the population here, maybe some sports don't fit here in Ohio, high school-wise, they got to go more out-of-state. So they're going to manage that cash budget accordingly. Football has always been under a model, if you put somebody on any sort of scholarship, it has to be on a full ride. So we will not go up to 105 scholarships. We'll be less than that. But what coach will have the ability to do, he could say, I want 70 guys on a full ride. And then the other 35, I'm going to give you 25%.
Partial, yeah.
He's a little bit better than you, so I'm going to give you 10%. We've never had the ability to do that. So it's almost a enhanced sort of walk-on program. Walk-ons are important. Building your roster out to 105. I think a lot of people think
walk-ons are going away, and that's
They're not going away. They're not. But you may have a walk-on on a $5,000 scholarship. You've never had that flexibility before. Same thing will apply in basketball, in women's basketball, again in baseball and softball, men's tennis. The roster limit is 10 in men's and women's tennis. Again, if Ty Tucker wants to give somebody a full ride, he'll have that flexibility. If he wants to do half,
so his name's on the building, so he's kind of earned. He's
earned that. So the key, I think, in how we did it was not be fixated on, hey, you have this amount of scholarships. No, here's a cash budget. So one, it gives us budget certainty. Here's a cash budget. You spend it how you see fit to run your program. And then you're going to have revenue sharing for some sports, not all sports, some sports. And then obviously you'll still have third-party NIL.
So that revenue sharing tranche, like the exact number is unknown at the moment. But
20.5
that's for the entire athletic program, right? So you're talking 60% of that probably for the football program. Is that a fair estimate, or is that?
Yeah, it's kind of toggling in that realm. Yeah,
and then
a little bit higher.
The third tranche,
yep,
which is still obviously, as you said, third-party NIL.
Right.
What is the plan? What is your strategy for making sure that bucket stays as full as the middle one? Because I think that there's a section of the fan base that will say, well, now they can pay this money. We don't need to donate. We don't need to contribute.
Right.
What is what's the path?
I think there's several layers to that, but I'll address just the fundraising piece and the need to just keep generating revenue. We will launch what's called a Champions Fund. And that will be sort of discretionary, unrestricted giving, because we still have to pay for the $20.5 million.
Sure.
We have to pay for that as a department expense. So we've reduced expenses and we are projecting new revenue. So that's how we're paying for it as of now. But you never stop raising money. Back to your fundraising comment. Your fundraising never stops. So we've got a lot of initiatives that we'll launch and really get out there. We've launched a few already, but related to season ticket renewals. So we got to fill that bucket. We got to make sure we continue to raise money. The NIL bucket, this roadmap is still being developed by the Autonomy for conferences. The House case allows us to create rules of engagement on what third-party NIL will look like. It's supposed to be built around fair market value. It's supposed to be built around a quick turnaround. So if a young person, young man or woman gets offered a deal from a company, they have to run it through a clearinghouse. Again, yet to be built. Yet to be determined who enforces it. I hope we don't make it too complicated.
But there has to be some rule.
It's the NCAA.
There's got to be some rules, right? But you also, look, what got us in trouble is we created a restrictive environment. We can't have a restrictive environment, even though it may go through some fair market value test. So all that's being built out. The Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12, a little bit of the Pac-12, we're building out what these models can look like. So what we'll need from fans. So here's our vision. Is we will have our third-party operator, Learfield. They run Ohio State sports properties. They run our radio network. They do all the sponsor activation. We will basically deploy some new staff members, and they will go out and they will facilitate agreements between athletes and companies. So companies that are owned by Buckeyes, companies that have marketing funds that they're already spending in the marketplace, some are already doing NIL agreements. We'll kind of bundle those up into this new entity. And then what we'll do is we'll sit down with an athlete and say, here's your scholarship. Here's your revenue share from the institution. Now you can go talk to these folks over here, and they will connect you with companies to produce NIL. What those numbers are, what that looks like, I think we can be really, really competitive because of where we sit. Yeah. But we don't have a true projection yet on what that is. We have some ideas based on the current market. But I think we can have a really robust system. We're in Columbus, 2 million people. How many companies are based here? Yeah. How many Buckeyes-owned companies? So we will engage in that world once we have kind of the structure set up, once we know the rules of engagement. Again, we can't make it too complicated. It's got to be simple, and it cannot be restrictive because that's what got us in trouble.
But in the meantime, while you're waiting for the House case to get figured out and to get these rules in place, who's responsible for reaching out to CEOs of companies that are owned by the world's third richest person buying a quarterback that your program desperately needs? Yeah. Because I mean, just as a hypothetical, I'm just throwing
what a random example.
I'm just throwing out one out
that
there.
happened. Yeah. That's crazy.
In a world where the one rule that still exists is NIL should not be used as an inducement in recruiting, which obviously everyone knows it's happening. How do you navigate these waters? And is it just like, hey, Vivek Ramaswamy, can you stop by the office for a minute? I need to borrow a couple $1 million. I mean, how does this work?
Yeah, all the above, right? All the above.
He's watching right now.
You're right. So what's happened? So there's a gap period. There's a transition period, basically between this recruiting cycle.
I call that the desperation period for the programs that are on the border of desperate. They're like, this is our moment to make a real play.
Yeah, and so the $20.5 million. That's a cap. It's based on a formula. Yeah. That doesn't go into effect until July 1st. So anything between now and July 1st will not count against the 20.5. So what you're seeing is collectives still operate. So we still have very robust collectives here. They're still doing a great job. They still have contracts with athletes. We're still raising money for those collectives. We're trying to be creative in this sort of interim period to make sure that all those things are fully funded. And we've got people that are stepping up on a consistent basis. So the governor's executive order here in Ohio allows us flexibility. We can actually receive some of that money at the university. And then we can create some agreements with Learfield where they can contract with an athlete during this gap period. Right. So what you're seeing is more institutional involvement in all of this, which is where this was going to head anyway. In the new operation, you're going to see even more institutional involvement. So we have donors that basically are helping fund this gap period, just like other programs are doing. Everybody's kind of rushing to see, okay, what does this look like between now and June 30th? And to me, that's exciting. It gives fans, donors another chance to continue to support athletes. But even now, we can be more involved. We're working on revising the state law. To give us even more flexibility during this gap period. So it's a moving target.
Yeah, it's obviously an important topic. Yep. That is now, that it is the reality.
Yeah, we're in the retention cycle and we're in the transfer portal cycle.
The great thing is that it all gets to happen right at once while you're preparing for the playoff. Like an amazing
calendar.
By the
way, we have a game in 9 days.
Is there, because I understand and I explain it all the time. Well, students have to be in school in January. Is there any solution that you think could exist to remove the clutter of December?
Here's what I'll say, because there's a lot of ideas that have been floated. We have to clean up the calendar in football. Yeah. Both the playing season calendar, we should have 2 bye weeks every year. But because of the way the calendar sits, some years you have 1. This year we had 2. I think next year we have 2.
2 next year, yeah.
But the following year we only have 1. So we need to remake the entire football calendar. What's the season look like? What's signing day look like? What's transfer portal world look like? Because that's not going away. It's only going to continue, right? How do we protect our coaches? The good thing about one of the changes that was made is coaches were not going out on the road in December. Could you imagine that?
Yeah.
One more piece.
If you're out on the road and you're signing and you're transfer portal and you're going to the, so we at least got that part. So there's a lot of different ideas out there, but we have to clean up the calendar in some way, shape, or form. So all of this is not right on top of each other.
Right.
And so I think that's where the 4 conferences are going to lean in once we get through the House settlement, once we get through some of the NIL infrastructure. We've really got to look at how do rules get made? How do we recruit in this new era? What does all that look like? And I think we can come together for some common solutions. That's probably the next wave of this.
Berm, do you have anything else on that? Because we've been way too serious for a normal episode of Freaky Friday.
Ask, like, do you ever watch the local media? Do you know anything about what we do? We've had this running gag on the show for like 3 months now, where
the Freaky Friday thing.
Well, no, it's just every.
That's what we call the Friday episode.
Okay.
Every episode that
once we get to the end of the week, we just we might not talk as much ball.
Every episode that I'm on turns somewhat strange because it's just my nature.
Yeah.
And I've had this.
Well,
we've
there's so many podcasts.
Look how nervous he's getting.
There's so many podcasts. Like, which one do you follow? I mean, I follow you guys. I follow your podcast.
Thank you.
But I wake up, when I work out in the morning, I get up early and I work out. And this is before any live shows are on. I'm like, okay, which podcast am I going to listen to today?
Well, we're up 5 a.m. every day.
And you guys are always right there in my feed. So
I have this. First time we talked about like having you on the show, you mentioned like, hey, we'll sit down, have a bourbon, and talk. Which there's no bourbon.
There's no bourbon in here,
which is very disappointing.
It's only 2:45.
It's Freaky Friday, Ross. I guess
that's another part of the show. It's definitely Friday morning as we're sitting here doing this. Don't worry about that.
So I've had this running gag that Ross likes to party. That's basically what I
really?
just think. Ross, we're waiting for a chance to party with Ross.
Yeah.
What is your go-to bourbon when you do?
God, there's so many.
Sit back and have
many good
chance
ones.
to relax.
Yeah, there's so many good ones out there. It's hard to pick one. So I moved back to Kentucky in spring of 2010, and was over at a friend's house that I knew for a long time, and he's got like Pappy Van Winkle just like right in his cabinet. You could literally walk into a store, right, and grab a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle back in 2010. And it lasted up until like 2012-ish.
Okay.
Because we moved to Oxford, Mississippi, and you could walk in. Well, you can't get that stuff anymore.
No.
So that's off the list, right?
Yep.
But that's when I first started kind of getting into bourbon. Oxford was a really cool place. We had a nice little bourbon club. So we'll do like a bourbon tasting.
That's a great idea. I just think that
we'll get a bourbon tasting.
I told everyone I was going to ask, do you party?
Yeah.
So I had to follow through.
It's called you have to pace yourself.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful. Yes. Do I like a nice beverage? Of course. A lot of people do. So what I would say is I love anything E.H. Taylor. I think those are just great products. Single barrel, small batch. Anything in the Weller. But again, a lot of this stuff you just can't get. A kind of a sneaky one is Widow Jane. It's a New York based. It's pretty readily available now. That's a sneaky good one. I've enjoyed the High Bank.
So our branding, my branding, is road beers. You may have known if you picked that up by following us. So like that's so you're speaking a different language as me. So if you're saying we're going to have a bourbon tasting, I'm going to have to that's all going to be new for me. And then you'll be on a road beers episode, and we'll take care of that because your predecessor would take like screenshots of road beers and he'd be like, I'm going to come out and do this for you guys, but he never did.
Okay.
So the pressure is on for you to do that.
But no, I just look. I like a good.
You don't get a lot of
sip
chances to relax, right? So
Look, we we have a great family environment, and so we always just enjoy just quiet moments, right, where you can just take a deep breath, enjoy a nice cocktail of some kind, be moderate, be intentional. We got to be careful,
right.
But that's sort of some of the flavors. I've enjoyed some of the Ohio stuff. The High Bank Distillery, they put out some great products, and there's one it's kind of a sneaky one too, Augusta Distillery. It's a real small So
You want to find the craft distillers, craft beer.
The craft.
Yeah.
And the thing about bourbon too is there's so much product out there right now because the boom started, 10 years ago, and now all this stuff is maturing, and it's just fast. It's part of it is the chase of getting a bottle that you never thought you could get, and so those are some of the fun moments.
Have you found anywhere in Columbus, not to drink, but take the family out somewhere that you've liked to go eat or hang out? That you haven't been here too long yet, so I don't know. But has there been and you're pretty busy.
Yeah. We like the Grandview Avenue area, so we've been there a couple times. Stoff's Coffee's right there, so morning meetings or something like that, and then the Avenue. We live in Upper Arlington, so Hudson 29 is like right on the way.
Yep,
that's been cool. A neat place is Gallows. I'm probably going to get in trouble because I'm naming too many places.
Gallows.
Austin is
I've been keeping Gallows in business since the moment we moved here. So
again,
shout out to them.
Sort of sneaky.
Big Ohio State fan.
So that's been fun. I got to give a shout out to some sponsors, right? Hyde Park.
Okay.
Hyde Park is our
Nicole
official
Cox and Roosters.
Steakhouse.
Can't leave
Roosters.
Because they're also,
see, I'm getting in trouble because I'm naming
we have to
too many specifics.
We're contractually obligated, just like you, to mention Roosters. So
I have to eat it 3 times a week.
Well, and part of it is your sons. I think both my boys, our oldest is off in college, but our youngest, they could eat at Chipotle every meal. Like they literally could live off of that. So we actually don't live too far from one, and so it's usually DoorDash is like, left a basketball game, left a football workout, Chipotle's on the front porch by the time we get home. So
there's been a lot of talk about football.
Yep.
You just brought up basketball, so I'm going to ask. The Shot, and this, again, it's Friday. Yeah. I say kind of what I want to say. The Shot is a terrible place to watch a basketball game from a fan perspective. It's too big. It's not loud enough. When there's a once or twice a year, you get a really good game in there, and the crowd will show up. But it's not an environment that feels like conducive to just being loud. Whereas St. John Arena, which was one of the best basketball arenas in the country, it just sits there. And is there any way that you or the people in the powers that be have thought about the Shot's there? It still makes money. It's still there for all these other concerts and all these other events. What is St. John Arena's plan?
If you're asking, would you ever move back there for anything? The answer is no. It would take way too much to get it up to just any sort of modern day code, infrastructure, seating, aisle width, technology, video boards. It would be way too cost prohibitive, and the yield on that would only get you maybe just what you just said. It'd be nostalgic, right? It would be really, really complicated. And so the plan for that corridor is really that's campus proper. At some point in time, as part of a master plan, something has to be redone in that space. It's valuable real estate. The buildings are aging. We are putting our foot on the gas pedal as soon as we can on trying to figure out what happens with hockey. So we will have a men's and women's combined hockey facility, 4,500, 5,000 seats, somewhere in there. Go over in the athletic district is the plan, near the Cavelli Center. So we need to accelerate that as soon as possible. So we're trying to determine what does it cost to build an ice hockey rink. How do we pay for it? How do we raise money for it? Once we get that decision and that roadmap, then that'll kind of dictate what happens to the St. John corridor area, as I call it. It's valuable property. I mean, think about game day. If you had things tucked up against, the riverside. And so I don't want to be too specific, but we really need to work with the university on what the future of that property is. But the cost to get it up to speed would not be worth it. And so then what you have to do is say, okay, what can we do at the Schottenstein Center? One of the first things, the ripple effect of building a new ice rink, is it gets hockey out of the Schott, which then frees up maybe some ability to bring seats closer because you don't have to have near the expansion. The hockey infrastructure underneath, maybe you could have a courtside space or a dining facility or something like that. So ice hockey is kind of a linchpin to a lot of decisions, right? The St. John area, the Schottenstein Center. So we need to get hockey off the ground. We're working as hard as we can to do that. Again, it's men's and women's. That really wasn't clarified before, but it's men's and women's facility. then I think we have the ability to go into the Schottenstein Center and say, where can we put the students?
Yep.
How do we make courtside what it should be? Can you have like a student mosh pit kind of thing where they're right behind the basket? Those kind of cool things. I mean, we've done a good job of putting them on the sideline, but they're not necessarily there every game.
Right.
So how do we create, again, kind of back to the football atmosphere? What can we give the students to grab onto? Because students lead energy, especially in basketball. Yeah. If the students are engaged, gives the fans they're having fun. Yeah. Let's have fun myself.
Let's join in, yeah.
So it's kind of a ripple effect. We're doing a few things to the shot to help the team. We got a recovery room going and things like that. But you're right. How do we make the atmosphere? We're not going to shrink the size. It is what it is. But how do we make the atmosphere, especially in the lower bowl, more engaging?
You just feel like you've obviously put faith into Jake Diebler and the program, and you want energy behind it. But
that's right.
That building sometimes feels like it sucks the energy out of it.
Right. That's right. That's right. So those are the kind of things. And, the NIT environment last year, that was fun.
Yeah.
But we kept it lower bowl, right? So I don't think you would do that on a permanent basis, but the energy that was created from that, that's what we need to replicate. And Coach Diebler, he is awesome. He's so mature, beyond his years. He totally gets it. Talk about chemistry, culture, vibe with the players.
Yep.
I mean, those guys love him. So it's only going to get better under his leadership.
Well, it may not feel like this to you, but we feel like we're just scratching the surface. But we're gonna cut it short so that we can reschedule for the bourbons and the beers for later, because there's still, people wondering about the turf and the formation or the way that the college football playoff is set up. Like, those are conversations that would take way more of your time, and you're pretty busy. You've got a playoff game to get ready for in
big noon kickoffs, those kind of things, right?
Scheduling,
those kind of topics.
The things that, and I understand why, like the logistics and the passion of the fan base and what they're really interested in. So we'll come back and we'll do more of that, hopefully, if you let us back in. But
as long as we not do it on a Friday, I'll play more straight.
All right, that sounds good.
I don't know about that. The rest was pretty serious.
Probably not.
Yeah. The most serious that you've ever been. But
that's cool.
We greatly appreciate Ross Bjork, Ohio State Athletic Director, having us in here for a little Freaky Friday conversation on the Podcast Daily. For Ross and Berm, I'm Austin. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you later.